let me know when the streaming's ready to go then.
Live now.
Okay, well, welcome to the Node.js Foundation TSC meeting, April 6, 2017. So far we have here Michael Dawson, Jeremiah Sambickel, Colin Ehrig, Tracy Hines, Josh Gavant, Brian Hughes, and that's it. We have about 5 issues on our agenda, maybe 6. Collaboration summit, input on employer restrictions to the TSC director, which we're going to defer the public discussion until next week. Nominating Anna Henningsen, nominating Michael Dawson to the TSC. Copyright date and updating the copyright and clarifying which people should be org owners. Before we dive into that agenda though, a quick review of last week's meeting. I wasn't there, but I believe the collaboration summit was discussed and funding was approved. Does anybody else who was there have anything else to add? I'm actually wondering if this still needs to be on the agenda at all anymore.
Yeah, I think we said if we have people that are organizing it, then yeah, it's good. And Anna has been stepping up and moving it forward. So I think that's what it was.
Okay. So do you think we should take it off remove the TSC agenda or leave it on for discussion?
Unless we have, input in how it's being run, I don't think there's anything we need to talk about. Okay,
so I'm just going to say in the minutes, agreed. This just should have TSC agenda removed. Okay. One code of conduct for everything. Again, people who are there, anything to highlight on that front?
We ended up concluding, I think, that we would put it in the TSC repo, and James was going to open a PR for that.
Okay, so let's say I did notice that TSC is no longer has TSC agenda, so that's good. Charter.
We do have PRs open for that already, in fact. So yeah, just everyone go take a look.
Perfect. So it's covered. And finally, revised membership rules. I don't see that on the agenda either anymore. So I think anybody else got the details of what was agreed? I think it was probably just agreed to move forward.
Well, we had there was a couple edits from James, and we sent it to vote again. I think it finally got approved, and now it's before the board.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so moving on to the agenda items for this week. So the next collaboration summit, we've already talked about that. We already talked about that. Input on employer restrictions, we're going to defer till next week. So the next one is nominating Anna Henningsen to the TSC. I know people have been voting in the issue itself. So let's just pull that open. Sorry, I'm still cutting and pasting. Just going to see if we've got quorum on that or not yet.
We have 8 votes so far, and I think that there's 12 people total right now.
Yeah, we have 12 people. Yeah.
So yeah, 8 is quorum, right?
Should be.
Certain it is.
Okay, so do we just say 8 people passed? Okay, so 8 out of 12, I'm going to take that as a note. 8 out of 12 voted +1, so passed. Okay, so next issue is the same issue for nominating myself. don't know if somebody else should take looking at that and deciding whether we're there or not.
Yeah, so I count 9 votes in this thread, which is
Okay, so same thing. I'll copy the comment. Thanks for the update in terms of the, so 9 out of 12. Welcome, Michael. Excellent. Okay. Sorry, what was that?
I was just saying, yay, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks. Yeah, yay. Okay, copyright date. So 195. Let's see if there's anything new on that guy. I don't see any updates since the 23rd. I think we were possibly waiting for board feedback, but I don't see any notes that we actually went and asked them what we should do there. Right, so okay, so James has, last thing seems to be James has the action to draft up a proposal. Unless anybody else has heard that it's gone to the board, I think we're just waiting to hear on that one, right?
Is this the copyright date one?
Yeah, I think this is to see whether we can, we need to keep those copyright dates in the copyright text. So there's two questions. One, like, do we need to update it? And is it okay to update it? And is it okay to actually just remove it completely?
Yeah, I don't think any action has been taken on this yet.
Okay.
Yeah, from my side, I don't recall hearing that conversation happening.
Okay, so I'll just leave the status as James is putting together the proposal. I'm going to actually ping him in the issue itself just to see if he's made progress. It's just not there. Any progress on the proposal? Okay. Okay, updating the copyright. So number 174. Just gonna open that. I haven't heard anything on it since last discussion, so let's see if there's anything in the issue. Okay, last update was 20 days ago, so I think before the previous meeting. I think, as I remember, we were just waiting for the board to come back on the, we asked them if we could move forward with the second step, and we were waiting to see if we heard back from them.
That's my recollection too.
Okay.
I think we got a proposal in for the reduced copyright, but have not heard back. I think that was presented at some point to board members.
Tracy, has there been a recent board meeting?
It was one like a week or two ago, right?
Yeah. I can pull up the notes. I don't recall that being resolved.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know that that's been I know the 2 points were ongoing discussions. The first one was approved and the second had been sent back, and it sounds like y'all had sent that back, but I don't recall in the last meeting that being resolved.
Okay, maybe
yeah.
with the legal committee.
Yeah, it's possible that it got stuck there. Let me look that up real quick.
This says, 20 days ago, is it okay to remove the CTC agenda? We can put it back on when there's something to report. Okay, it says, the last comment says, we'll update if there's any change. So I think the answer is we should probably take the CTC agenda off this at this point. Is everybody okay with that? Or the TSC agenda?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just going to agreed. Last meeting, we should remove TSC agenda until there is an update. I'm removing it. Oops, that didn't remove it. Okay, I've removed it now. Okay, so moving on to the last issue, which is clarify which people should be org owners. I know there was discussion back and forth on that. Part of the discussion was around some of the repos, I guess, in terms of concern over the secrets repo. I know part of it was clarified that, you know, getting access to the secrets repo doesn't actually give you access to the secrets because they're still encrypted. So I think it's not necessarily required to remove that if more people have access, or to work, you know, in terms of worrying about the access. I think we still don't want to have you wouldn't want to have it be public. But the consensus is that, you know, if it's going to be, say, collaborators or whatever, we wouldn't necessarily need to move it out.
So that's good on the secrets repo. I think this has come up in a couple other places also. What exactly maybe we should start by documenting the available GitHub groups and what the rights they confer. I don't even know what they all are, and then kind of relating that to membership in the various, either in the foundation and the working groups. You know, it's kind of ad hoc now.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good idea, that a bigger picture look would make sense, because we have given out rights to, like, you know, now working groups to be able to run CI jobs, and having that all sort of in a short description somewhere would actually be quite useful.
This is about making like TSC members org owners, though, right?
I think it's related because that means that those people have access to everything, like a larger set of the things.
Yeah, I guess I'm expanding the scope of what it says here. Right. So the question is just whether TSC should be org owners of the GitHub org?
Yeah.
So does that mean all? Or are you talking about just Node? Like the Node org? Never mind. Sorry, that's confusing.
No, I think it's the one. Yeah, I think it's today CTC and TSC members are all org owners.
Not all the CTC members are, as
No?
far as I understand.
Okay.
All the TSC members, I think, are. I'm not sure if Josh is.
Where does that put the community committee in terms of? So the TSC is org owners over everything in GitHub. Is that the idea? Even though the scope was limited recently?
I think we only have the one org, so yes.
Yeah, this was a discussion that we'd had before, I think, with I think back in December with Rod and William and James in a very unquorumed TSC meeting, because it was the holidays. But where it's sort of like, well, where does the community committee belong? Because we want to be alongside everything that's happening, because we are, you know, as we form. But the org ownership is a little awkward in that scenario.
So
I've tended to push this so far. Sorry to interrupt. I've tended to push this so far is, you know, more the question of asking, you know, why do people need to be owners? You know, how does not being an owner interfere with a person's ability to, you know, perform the role that they're in? And so, like, you know, the reason to be an org owner is typically to either, you know, hand out permissions or to moderate. I believe that's like the two things.
No. So there's some other things involved, because GitHub permissions are actually kind of very terrible for this. Org owners only org owners can invite people to the org. We've been trying to fix that with bot permissions. I think team owners might be able to, or there's some way, but it's not automatic, that you can adjust like the title plates on repositories, like the thing that appears at the header essentially of the repository, and then creating repositories.
Right, and creating
I
teams.
think you can.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can just do that without being an owner. You might be able to. Creating teams, you can't.
Right. Inviting people to a team, you can invite them if they're already a member of the broader org, but if they're not a member of the org, that has to happen first too.
Right.
So that's right. that does
Yes.
that. Yeah, maybe this would be a useful exercise for us to go through, like get all this written down in that issue of like, what are the things that need to be done as an org owner, and how much of it can be mitigated by bots, and like how does that affect the roles? So like the community committee is, I think, a really interesting one because going back to why do community committee members need to be org owners in order to perform that role? My guess would probably be moderation and inviting people to the committee.
Invite people, yeah.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, I don't actually think like most people in community committee would want that role either. It was just more along the question of what Brian said, which was like, why do people want the org owner role in the first place? Like, I would assume that it should be less people, not more. But it is sort of a tag of like leadership, I suppose, and like who's responsible for these things.
I don't think.
Personally, for me, it's been most useful in terms of like, okay, we got a new team for the NAPI. You can just create that and
Oh yeah.
and add the people in who are working on that, and so that's where if you have fewer people doing that, you're going to have more requests to somebody to say, hey, can you create me these teams, or can you create me these repos?
Mm.
And
Yeah, I've had it come up for me, like I wanted to add that diag agenda label, and I could only do it in the repos where I had access.
Yeah. I have the same problem.
I mean, we should probably like try to talk to GitHub about like adding more permissions again. I think it's always going to be awkward on some level, at least foreseeably, the way things have gone, without actually just moving lots of those private repos to a separate org.
yeah, I mean, I guess it's like the security one I can see is perhaps, the biggest problem. I don't know, like, does the community committee, is there an issue for having, the CTC and TSC as org owners? Because it really should be independent. And
Well, I think that was the caution there was like,
Right.
the reason we didn't form a separate org was because just from like a figurative perspective, like that sets us apart, and that's like the opposite of like we're
Right.
all the community. Like that doesn't make
Yep.
any sense. But yeah, I mean, it was just in terms of like, because we are autonomous, it's all like we realized like we were just going to pause because we don't have these concerns yet. Like we haven't run into a circumstance where we're butting our heads up against the wall and being like, oh, well, like the TSC shouldn't be doing this. Like, no, that's not a thing. So like, that's why we haven't asked for this, because we haven't run into a problem yet regarding this. And we were trying to caution from like just trying to set these arbitrary things in place because out of fear of things that have not happened.
Right. So coming back to the point, like of the issue, so in the past, well, we didn't really add TSC members for a long time, but at some point in the past, we were just all given owner permissions, probably by Michael. I don't remember the specifics on why. So the question is, should we just like keep doing that, or should like the existing owners be trimmed down and be more specific in some way?
I mean, I guess it's like you need owners who could, or org owners who can do those various things like creating teams and repos and
Inviting people. Yeah.
and inviting people. How small do you want to make that group? This, I think probably the reason it was given to everybody is that, we've tried to make it easier for people to do things. And
Well,
then,
Yeah, if we're not going to give if we're not going to give those rights to TSC members, like who are we going to give them to? We ultimately need someone to have them, and like.
I think that's what we're saying here, is that maybe it's time to figure out what organ ownership means and then get people who are willing to be active. Because you're right, like you don't want the lottery factor where someone ghosts and they were responsible for that, or that repo or whatever. But I think being like, it's always nice to do a little cleanup and figure out like who actually wants to do that work, and then maybe they should be the ones. I don't know. That's more work.
Yeah, and you could even make it opt in, right? Like you could say that anybody from say the CTC or TSC are eligible, but
Yeah.
only if you ask, right? So that way, you've limited it to people who actually said, yeah, I think I need this, right?
Right. And now, does the org ownership also include the stuff around security? That's part of the problem, is that
Yes.
you have access to. Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
so I was
that's
going to
the
say that I would like to encourage that the ComCom would also be part of that, but it does sound like, I know that that's a discussion not for now, because that, and not like some members from it, but that's a problem if there's the security repo.
So, yes, you can see all the private repos.
Right.
So I first just note that like the security repo isn't really security for like Node stuff in general. It is specifically about Node Core. Most external, I mean, there's like a security working group, and there's some movement on security data, I think, from NSP. That's kind of like a separate thing.
Yeah.
It was never intended to cover the same space.
Yeah. Also, keep in mind that at the time that these permissions were originally handed out, the TSC was still in charge of core too, like in a direct way.
Well, they're
That's
just
how
it
far it
was the TSC. There was no CTC. It was just the TSC.
I think so. Yeah, I think it goes that far back.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure it was just that there was one group, so everybody in the group was added in.
Yeah.
Now that there's two groups, you can actually have the question, whereas before it wasn't even a question.
Yeah. So everyone in that original group, like they were essentially secured, related to like the security and stuff, anyways, in some way, like around Node Core. So
Yeah,
wasn't,
that totally
like,
makes
an
sense.
issue, but now that's just like some history.
Yeah.
It sounds like the only one where like there might be a current concern is the security one, right?
Well, I'd say that there is also just a broader, more general thing is that, org ownership is a bit keys to the kingdom in a large sense. And, it's not that I don't trust the individuals, but, accounts get compromised and things like that. And just the more people who have access, the greater chance that, someone's account might be compromised or something, and then people could do some real damage to the org. So,
Yeah.
for that reason, you usually want to keep, the number of people limited just to decrease surface area.
Yeah, true. And that's where the opt-in might help, right? So like the people who are going to be active and have used it are in and the other people aren't. I mean, moving the security repo out is, I'm just wondering, like, so we just create a second org, right? And have that repo and maybe others. Is there anything more subtle to that than I'm missing?
No, you just have to wave your hand to in terms of making sure that we don't have to pay for it, we just have to wave our hand to GitHub to make sure that they know it's a part of Node still.
Right, yeah, to get the private ones.
Mm-hmm. But they were pretty quick when I did that for the certification process.
And if we do that, just kind of asking, so who would determine who gets access to that repo? Is it current security members, the CTC, the TSC? I just ask as kind of like a circular thing. If ultimately it's up to the CTC or the TSC to assign new people to that group.
Well, yeah, you've got the.
I guess it could be a vote. Like the TSC might be responsible for assigning people, but if someone on the TSC just decides they want to join, they would still have to maybe be approved by the TSC somehow.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a TSC decision, at least, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we sit in the chain of who can approve it, sure. Who gives access currently to the security repo, though? Because it's not the TSC, or in practice, it's not us, I should say.
Yeah, well, we would be delegating to the CTC probably, so I guess it's them.
Well, or the security repo, you might delegate to the people who are the security team.
Yeah. Well, what does it say in the README? Does the TSC manage security or does the CTC? Look that up.
Yeah, and again, it may have been created when there was only one.
And they actually don't repo, or I mean a README in the repo. So
Right. Yeah, there's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it is private, so there's not nearly as much of a need for one, but
And I think it's been relatively ad hoc. You know, Rod's been involved in who gets added. I know James has probably been involved, and it's probably reasonable for us to formalize, you know, that process. You know, I think it's been people who have been, you know, people that have been in the group where we've said, yeah, okay, we know them, and there's a reason for them to need access to that security data.
yeah, I feel like this is a thing we should delegate to the CTC. Let the CTC figure out who wants to get added or not. Because who's going to be added or not, you know, I would assume is going to be based on very technical reasons, and those permissions, you know, involve like technical reasons to have or not have those permissions. So, or at least I'd like to hear what the CTC thinks. And
I think you're, yeah. Now thinking that that's Node Core related as well, that probably does make sense.
Yeah, I believe that I had an email from Michael at some point. I think that it said, I think he felt that the CTC and security committees were kind of overlapping. Like anyone on the CTC would have access to security stuff, which I don't know if it's true. That was the impression I had, which supports what Brian just said.
So what's our next concrete step, I guess, on the discussion? Is it that we want to put together the list of privileges and stuff, or do we have something to move forward to on the like, because that's almost a separate issue from the security repo itself, right? I mean, the issue we were talking about, security repo is one thing that plays into it, but it's just because we decide who are the org owners, we haven't solved that problem. I guess unless they overlap 100%. Like if all TSC members should have access, then maybe in all org owners are CTC and TSC, maybe it's just fine. So should we be going back to the CTC to say, well, who should have access by default?
I can certainly get behind that. I don't feel like I have strong opinions myself. Shouldn't.
Okay, so I'm taking note that says we should open a CTC issue to ask who should have access as one of our concrete steps. And then I still like the idea of more in terms of the bigger picture to try and document the different permissions and all that stuff that you get and why you might want them.
Yep, I definitely agree. You know, enumerating lists, at least that has helped me to really like make these kinds of questions more concrete and easier to like, you know, really reason about.
On the first question, though, have we concluded that members of the TSC should have org ownership, but we have to work out the security and secrets repos? Is that basically what we're at?
Well, it was almost, I thought it was like if we could show what you got, then you could answer that question as to whether they just have it or not, right? Like it gives you the data to say, yeah, okay, it makes sense for this group of people to have it because it allows them to do these things and we want these people to be able to do it.
I see. So like right now we're aware of like security and secrets, but if we properly document everything, other things could turn up too.
Well, we know there's the other, like, those are the potential issues. The other ones are more like, you know, there's a comment like, well, it's just having them is a risk itself. So you could say, well, let's have nobody, but then how would that impact our ability to get stuff done? So understanding what all these things let you get done, you know, helps to paint the picture of, yeah, okay, it's better to have more people to have it, even though there's a risk, because it lets things move forward as opposed to being bottlenecked on a smaller number of people. Yeah,
so far it seems to have been okay. Like I'll just like the YouTube account, like it's super annoying that actually I go to YouTube and it logs me on as the Node Foundation. And
Right.
But like that, like I've occasionally like forgotten to switch and like I don't know, like favorited a video or something, like, oh shoot, I got to change that.
Yeah.
But that's worked. But like despite that potential for problems, it really hasn't caused a problem. So I don't know. I'm saying like it seems like it's okay for the 15 or 20 people.
Yeah, I'm in the same thought process. Like, it doesn't seem to have been an issue, and we should trust those 15 or 20 people. So
Yeah, we gotta trust someone.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty reasonable number where we're at right now. I'm mostly thinking if this were going to scale out in the future, if say the CTC grows quite a bit larger, for example, which would be awesome if it did. Getting more people is great, but if we're all of a sudden looking at 50 Oregoners, hypothetical, we're getting a lot of awesome people helping out. Then that might be a little trickier.
right. So in terms of sort of taking it back to next steps, we can ask the CTC, open the CTC issue to get input on who they think should have access to the security repo. Yeah, thanks. And do we want to put together the overall picture? Do we think we need to do that, or are we like we're okay for now? And
I think it'll be worth opening an issue. I mean, it's like the only reason I'm not like saying, oh, I would love to do that is just because of time. But if I had time, it would be be a nice to have.
Okay. So why don't we? Yeah, I think why don't we open the issue and we can see, like, if people jump in and it gets filled in, great. If not, we can discuss in a future meeting to try and put some more focus on that. That makes sense. And maybe at that point we'll have heard back on the security repo as well. So I'll take the action to open the issue in the CTC. I guess I can take the action to open both those issues. That's pretty easy.
Excuse me. We could definitely take like the opening the issue in the TSC as like a excuse me, as a sort of a crowdsourcing thing of like, what are places where various people have run into issues not having these permissions, that can help surface more use cases.
Yeah, okay. So maybe you're right. So instead of opening the issue in the TSC, we should open one in the CTC to say, can you identify where not being an org owner would have caused problems? Is that?
Yeah, I think that we'll get more visibility that way, and then we can just drop the link to that issue in the existing TSC issue.
Yeah, sounds good. Issue in CT. Use. Okay. Okay, anything more to discuss on that front this week? Okay, I think if not, at this point, we usually go to the YouTube channel or IRC to see if there's any external questions.
Someone asks, has Node ever applied for GSOC/GCI? I'm not really sure what those are.
Google Summer of Code.
Ah.
And the answer is a foundation, no, but sort of, because Outreachy that we participated in last fall was sort of an offshoot of Google Summer of Code.
Okay.
I don't know what GCI stands for, though.
So was Outreachy like actually part of Google Summer of the Code or just related?
Outreachy, I believe, came out of Google Summer of Code as an initiative to create a more diverse set of candidates for the internships because they weren't seeing that. And then eventually I believe that they became a separate entity and moved around foundations. So their
Okay.
last home was with the Freedom Software Conservancy. Software Freedom Conservancy, sorry.
Okay.
And we are, I will say, if anybody has questions about that, royal we is terrible. I am doing the research. We just finished the postmortems for the outreachy winter cohort and trying to figure out what our next steps are for our internship program this year.
Okay. Someone else asks stuff about effective memory management in Node.js, and I have directed that to the help repo. That is all you can see.
Okay. Okay, so if that's all of our questions, then I guess we can close the meeting for today.
Michael, I was going to say the last thing is that I did find the answer that y'all were discussing earlier regarding the copyright header.
Right, okay.
And it's not a very helpful answer, but it looks like the legal committee meeting had not been scheduled as of the last board meeting.
Okay, so once that gets scheduled, hopefully, it's not that they ignored it, it just hasn't happened yet, which is good.
Right.
Okay.
But it's always good to check up on them.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna clarify on this question. So, on rereading it, I think they're asking at like a high level, how Node.js compared to other technologies is solving memory intensive applications. Do we want to give a brief answer on that, if anyone has one?
Garbage.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how, a little more context would be good, because the Node has a GC just like other languages. And so it's whether, like, very huge heaps, or is it that, just lots of memory use, but then it ends up getting cleaned up by the GC, and, Node can keep up just like the other languages.
Right, yeah. I think this generally kind of depends on how you structure your applications in general, and how efficient you are with memory. A sort of a technical note, the V8 JavaScript engine does like to allocate for itself a lot of memory and then reuse that later on. So you might run into that. I think that's a good enough answer. We can probably...
Okay, so maybe if we're done the questions, we can end the live stream.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Yep, the next meeting is scheduled for April 20th at the same time, 4 o'clock Eastern, 2000 or 20 UTC,
Right.
and 1 p.m. Pacific.